I used to believe high school was predictable. The same corridors, the same faces, the same routine that repeated itself until the bell finally rang. I never expected that a single name on a project list would change everything I thought I knew about staying invisible. My name is Mira Evans. People know me, but they don't really see me. I'm the quiet one, the girl who eats lunch under the oak tree with a book instead of a group. The one who never raises her hand too high or speaks too loudly. It's safer that way. Crescent Valley High wasn't cruel, it was just divided. There were the athletes, the artists, the drama kids, and then there was the top of the pyramid. The ones everyone wanted to be near but never dared to touch. The roses. For girls who ruled the hallways with shiny hair, sharp eyeliner, and even sharper words. And leading them was Violet Gray. Violet was the kind of girl who could silence a room without saying anything. She didn't walk, she glided. Her laugh was soft, but dangerous, her eyes like mirrors that made you see every flaw you tried to hide. Teachers adored her, students feared her, and the world seemed to bend slightly when she passed by. She wasn't just popular, she was untouchable. And then there was me, blending into the background like a watercolor too faint to notice. I watched people like her from a distance, the way one might watch fire. Beautiful, but far too close to burn. That morning started like any other. The bell screamed through the hallway, sneakers squeaked against the polished floor, and chatter echoed off the lockers. I balanced a stack of textbooks in my arms, trying to reach my locker without bumping into anyone. The books slipped, paper scattered, and before I could bend down, someone's heel crushed the corner of my notes. I looked up. Violet Gray. She stood there in her crisp white jacket, one eyebrow arched, lips curved in that effortless smirk that made people both hate and adore her. Her friends stood behind her like shadows, watching for a reaction. "Careful, nerd," she said casually, glancing at the papers under her shoe. "You almost tripped on your own books." A few giggles broke out. My heart raced, but something in me refused to look away. I bent to pick up my things, then lifted my eyes to meet hers. At least I read them. The hallway went quiet. The laughter died as fast as it had started. Violet blinked, almost surprised. Then she gave a small laugh, the kind that sounded like it could cut you. "Cute," she murmured, stepping aside. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. My pulse hammered in my ears as I walked away, pretending not to care. But that moment stayed in the air like static. When the final bell rang, everyone rushed toward the notice board by the science lab. The teacher had posted the partner list for the final chemistry project. People groaned, laughed, swapped papers. I didn't rush. I never did. I just scanned the list quietly until my eyes stopped on two names written together. Violet Gray, Mira Evans. For a second, I thought it was a mistake. Then I heard her voice behind me. "You've got to be kidding me." I turned slowly. Violet was there, arms crossed, the rest of the roses clustered behind her like petals around a thorn. The teacher appeared in the doorway, cheerful and unaware of the storm she had just created. "Yes, Violet. You and Mira. You're both among my best students in different ways. I think this will be good for you." I wanted to protest, to explain that I worked better alone, but the words stuck in my throat. Violet's gaze found mine, cool and unreadable. "Guess I'm stuck with the nerd," she said, but there was no real venom in her tone. Just curiosity, maybe even something else. I forced myself to answer. "I'll make sure you get an A." Something flickered across her face, too quick to name. The corner of her mouth lifted slightly. "We'll see." The class buzzed with whispers. The roses exchanged glances. And I, Mira Evans, who had perfected the art of staying unseen, had somehow been paired with the most visible person in school. For the rest of the day, I tried not to think about it. I failed. Her name echoed in my head like a song I didn't want to memorize. Violet Gray. The girl who laughed without meaning it. The girl who could destroy your confidence with one look. And now, the girl who'd be sitting next to me for the next 3 weeks. That night, I sat at my desk, surrounded by open notebooks and half-finished models of molecules. My pencil tapped nervously against the page. I told myself it was just a project. Nothing more. People did schoolwork together all the time. It didn't matter that she made my pulse trip over itself, or that I could still hear her voice in my mind, teasing, amused, distant. When the next day arrived, the library felt quieter than usual. I had arranged the table with notes, diagrams, and the old chemistry book I loved more than most people. I didn't expect her to show up on time, but she did. Violet walked in like she owned the place. Her perfume lingered in the air, a soft floral scent that didn't belong in the dusty stillness of the library. She sat down without asking, tossing her hair over one shoulder. "So, how does this work?" Her tone was half bored, half curious. "We divide the work," I said. "You do the presentation, I handle the formulas." She leaned back in her chair, eyes studying me like a puzzle she wasn't sure she wanted to solve. "You're not even going to ask if I can do the formulas?" "I already know you can," I said. "You just don't want to." That made her pause. For a moment, her expression softened. Then she smiled again, slower this time. "You think you know me?" "No," I said, meeting her gaze. "But I think you want people to believe you don't care about anything. It's easier that way." Her smile faded. The silence between us stretched, filled only by the ticking clock and the faint hum of air conditioning. Finally, she exhaled, long and low. "You talk too much for someone who's always quiet." "I only talk when it matters," I replied. She looked away, but her lips twitched as if holding back another smile. "We'll start tomorrow," she said, standing up. "Don't be late, Mira." She said my name like it meant something. When she left, the air felt heavier, as if she had taken all the oxygen with her. I sat there, staring at the spot where she had been, trying to steady my heartbeat. That night, I dreamed of the hallway again. The sound of her voice, the flash of her eyes, the tension that clung between us like static. I woke up before sunrise, my chest tight, unsure whether I was excited or terrified. The next morning, her message appeared on my phone before I even left for school. "Violet, library after lunch. Don't keep me waiting." I stared at the screen, unsure if it was a command or an invitation. Maybe both. At lunch, I sat alone again, pretending to read while my mind drifted toward her. Across the cafeteria, she sat with her group, laughing, perfect, pretending. For a brief moment, our eyes met across the room. Just 1 second. But it was enough to make my breath catch. Maybe she looked because she was thinking about the project. Or maybe she looked because she was thinking about me. Either way, I knew one thing for sure. My quiet life was no longer quiet. The line between her world and mine had blurred, and there was no turning back. Violet Gray had noticed me. And somehow, that was both the best and the most dangerous thing that had ever happened. The rain started that morning, soft at first, just enough to blur the world outside the classroom windows. It smelled like wet pavement and cold air. By the time the bell rang, I had already packed my notes, half listening to the teacher explaining something about molecular reactions. My thoughts were somewhere else, circling the same name again and again. Violet Gray. She had texted me the night before, short and direct. "Tomorrow. My place. Project meeting." No please, no smiley face, just her voice condensed into words that didn't need permission. I hesitated before answering, then typed okay. Now, standing at the gate of her house, I wondered if I had made a mistake. The place looked like it belonged in a movie, white walls, big windows, a perfect front yard trimmed into shapes that had no reason to exist other than to impress. I rang the bell. Violet opened the door herself. She was wearing a loose gray sweater, her hair slightly messy, eyes brighter without the usual makeup. For a second, I didn't recognize her. She smiled faintly. "You're on time," she said, stepping aside. "Didn't think you would be." I said I would come. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "Right." She turned, leading me through a hallway lined with framed photos. Each one captured her smiling next to people who probably adored her, but none of those smiles looked real. We sat at a long wooden table in the living room. Books, papers, and her phone were scattered across it, like she had tried to look busy before I arrived. The rain tapped lightly on the glass door behind us. "So," she said, leaning forward, "how does this work again?" I took out my notes, spreading them neatly in front of her. "We'll start with the experiment plan. It's simple chemistry, mostly about heat reactions." "Simple for you," she said, tilting her head. "You actually enjoy this stuff." "I do," I admitted. "It makes sense to me." She studied me for a moment, as if I had said something strange. Then she smiled, small but sincere. "You know what? I like that about you." The words hit me in a way I couldn't explain. Compliments from Violet were rare, maybe even dangerous. I didn't trust them, but I wanted to. As we worked, I noticed how she chewed on her pen cap when she was thinking, how she leaned too close to read my notes, how her perfume changed each time she moved. The more time passed, the less she looked like the untouchable queen everyone worshipped. At one point, she caught me staring. "What?" she asked, smirking. "Nothing," I said too quickly. Her eyes softened. "You're really bad at lying, Mira." I looked down, pretending to fix a formula. She laughed quietly, the sound lighter than usual, without its sharp edge. It was almost gentle. Hours slipped by. The rain didn't stop, but neither of us cared. She told me about the upcoming dance, about how her friends wanted to wear matching colors, about how exhausting it was pretending to enjoy everything. "You think I like all that?" she asked suddenly. "Don't you?" She looked at the window, her reflection faint against the gray light. "It's easy to like something when everyone tells you you're supposed to." I didn't know what to say. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, just heavy. I could almost hear her thoughts brushing against mine. When the clock hit 5, she stood up and stretched. "You want something to drink?" "Water's fine," I said. She came back with 2 glasses, placing one near my hand. Her fingers brushed mine by accident, or maybe on purpose. I couldn't tell. My skin tingled where she touched me. "Thanks," I murmured. She sat across from me, resting her chin on her palm. "You don't talk much, do you?" "I talk when I have something to say." "And you think I talk too much?" "Maybe," I said, smiling a little. She leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "You're braver than you look." I didn't respond, but she saw the way my hand tightened on my pen. She smiled again, slower this time, almost curious. "Relax," she whispered. "I don't bite." Something in my chest twisted. I looked away, pretending to focus on the notes, but every cell in my body was aware of how close she was. Her voice, her scent, the quiet rhythm of her breathing. She stood, walked to the bookshelf, and started running her fingers along the spines. "You ever think about leaving this town?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said. "And?" "I don't know where I'd go." She turned to face me. "Anywhere." "That's the point." Her words hung in the air, soft but certain. For someone who seemed to have everything, she sounded like she wanted to escape. When I left her house that evening, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean. She walked me to the door, barefoot on the marble floor. Before I stepped outside, she said quietly, "You're not like them, Mira. You don't try too hard." I didn't know what to reply. I just nodded. She smiled, and for once, it didn't look like a mask. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her house, her laugh, the way her eyes looked when she said those words. It was strange, the way someone you thought you understood could suddenly become a mystery. The next day at school, Violet didn't sit with her usual group. She walked into class alone, wearing her uniform slightly undone, her hair loose. People stared, whispering, but she ignored them. She dropped her bag on the desk next to mine. "Morning," she said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Morning," I echoed. She glanced at my notebook, then pulled hers closer. "So what's next for our project?" The teacher hadn't even arrived yet. She was pretending, but I played along. We worked quietly while the rest of the class chattered. Once, she leaned in so close that her hair brushed my sleeve. I froze. She didn't move away immediately. By lunch, the rumors had already started. People noticed the way she laughed with me, how she followed me down the hall instead of her usual crowd. The roses looked confused. Some were angry. Violet didn't seem to care. We met again that afternoon in the library. The same table as before, the same books, but something in the air had shifted. She watched me write for a long time before speaking. "You really don't care what people say, do you?" I paused. "Why should I?" "Because I do," she said softly. "More than I want to." I looked up. Her eyes weren't cold this time. They were tired. Vulnerable in a way I had never seen. "You don't have to be perfect all the time," I said. She gave a small laugh, one that didn't reach her eyes. "Tell that to everyone else." I wanted to say more, but words felt useless. Instead, I reached for a paper that had fallen off the table. She did the same. Our fingers touched again. We both froze. Her skin was warm. My breath caught. For a second, the world narrowed to the space between our hands. She didn't pull away right away. Neither did I. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "Why do you do that to me?" "Do what?" "Make everything quiet." I didn't know what she meant, but something about it made my heart ache. She stood suddenly, gathering her things. "Same time tomorrow?" I nodded. She left without looking back. That night, I found myself replaying every detail. The sound of her voice, the way her fingers trembled slightly when they brushed mine, the fleeting softness that replaced her usual confidence. I realized I wanted to see that version of her again, the one she hid from everyone else. The next few days followed a rhythm neither of us dared to name. She started waiting for me after class. Sometimes she walked me halfway home, pretending it was coincidence. Sometimes she'd just stand by the lockers, talking about nothing, her tone lighter, her eyes brighter. I began to notice small things. How she bit her lip when she was nervous. How she hated silence, but filled it with music instead of words. How she avoided her phone when her friends texted. Each meeting felt different, like we were circling something fragile that neither of us wanted to touch too soon. One afternoon, we stayed longer than usual. The library lights dimmed, shadows stretching across the tables. She rested her head on her arm, watching me finish a paragraph. "You make this look easy," she murmured. "It's not," I said. She smiled, eyes half closed. "Still, it looks peaceful." Her hand slid closer, resting near mine. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth. The air between us seemed to hum softly. I didn't move. When the bell rang, she sat up, blinking as if waking from a dream. "See you tomorrow, Mira." Her voice lingered long after she left. That night, I stood by my window, watching the rain start again. Each drop on the glass sounded like a heartbeat, steady, uncertain, alive. I thought about her laughter, her eyes, the brief moments when her walls cracked enough for me to see the girl beneath. I didn't know what was happening between us, only that it was real and that it scared me in ways I couldn't name. Because every time she looked at me, it felt like something inside her was breaking. And every time I looked back, I realized something inside me already had. The days that followed began to melt into each other. The same classrooms, the same hallways, but everything felt different. The air carried something unsaid, a pulse I could feel each time Violet looked at me. It was subtle, like a change in temperature, yet impossible to ignore. She had started waiting for me after class. Sometimes she would lean against the lockers, phone in hand, pretending to scroll while her eyes searched for me. When I passed, she would fall into step beside me as if it were coincidence. People noticed. They whispered, but she didn't seem to care. In chemistry, she sat closer than necessary. Her perfume clung to the air between us. Every time our arms brushed, something inside me stirred, sharp and confusing. One afternoon, she turned toward me with that half-smile she used when she wanted to hide something. "You always look so serious," she said softly. "Do you ever relax?" "I'm relaxed now," I replied, not looking at her. "You're lying," she teased. I met her eyes then. "You'd know." Her laughter filled the space between us, light and easy, but underneath it was something else. A tremor neither of us named. The project should have been finished by then, but neither of us cared about deadlines anymore. We found excuses to meet. To review notes we already knew by heart, to discuss results that needed no correction. Every meeting stretched longer than planned. One afternoon, the sky was low and gray, the kind that made the world feel smaller. The library was almost empty. She arrived late, hair damp from the drizzle, cheeks flushed with color. "Sorry," she said, shaking water from her sleeves. "Had to deal with something stupid." "It's fine," I murmured, handing her a towel from my bag. She stared at it for a second before taking it. "You always have everything, don't you?" "I like being prepared." "Prepared for what?" "For people like you." Her smile faltered for a heartbeat, then she laughed again, softer this time. I don't know if that's an insult or a compliment. Maybe both. We worked quietly for a while. The sound of rain outside mixed with the soft scratching of pens on paper. After a moment, she pushed her notes away and leaned back in her chair. "Do you ever think about what people say?" she asked suddenly. "Sometimes." "And it doesn't bother you?" "It used to." Her gaze drifted toward the window. "I wish I could say the same." Something in her voice cracked a little. It wasn't loud, but it was real. I wanted to reach out to touch her hand, but I didn't. Instead, she spoke again. "You ever feel like you're playing a role that doesn't fit anymore?" I hesitated. "Maybe we all are." She looked back at me then, eyes softer than I had ever seen them. "I hate that everyone thinks they know me. The way I dress, who I talk to, who I pretend to like. It's exhausting." "You don't have to pretend," I said. Her lips parted slightly. For a moment, she didn't breathe. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," I whispered. The air between us thickened. Neither of us moved. The clock ticked somewhere far away, but it felt like the world had stopped paying attention. She reached across the table, fingers brushing the edge of my sleeve. It wasn't much, barely a touch, but it was enough to make my skin tremble. I looked down at her hand, then back up. Her eyes were wide, searching, uncertain. "Violet," I began, but she pulled back first. "Sorry," she said quickly. "I don't know why I—" "It's okay." She bit her lip, turning away. "No, it's not." Her voice was low, shaky. For someone who seemed so confident, she suddenly looked small, like the version of herself she never showed anyone. When the bell rang, neither of us moved. Students began leaving, their voices echoing down the hall. Violet stayed still, staring at the table. Finally, she stood, gathered her things, and whispered, "See you tomorrow." But tomorrow didn't come. She skipped class the next day. Then the next after that. I tried to focus, but everything felt off balance without her. The seat beside me stayed empty. Her laughter didn't fill the halls. Even the air seemed quieter. On the third day, I found her behind the gym, sitting on the concrete steps, knees pulled to her chest. The afternoon light fell across her hair like melted gold. She looked up when she heard me. "Hey," I said carefully. She didn't smile. "Didn't think you'd notice." I did. She stared at the ground, fingers tracing invisible lines. "They saw us. In the library. My friends. They think something's going on." I stayed silent. "They asked me if it was true," she continued. "If I actually liked you." She laughed bitterly. "Can you imagine? Violet Gray liking the quiet girl who sits alone." Her words stung, even though I knew she didn't mean them the way they sounded. "What did you tell them?" She hesitated. "Nothing." I walked away. I wanted to be angry, but I wasn't. I understood. She looked up, eyes glassy under the fading light. "I don't know what to do, Mira. I don't even know what this is." "Maybe you don't have to know yet," I said gently. Her shoulders dropped as if something inside her had loosened. "You're too calm," she whispered. "I have to be." She gave a small, tired laugh. "You make it sound like a rule." Maybe it is. For a long moment, we just sat there. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the faint sound of someone's laughter from far away. Violet leaned back against the wall, eyes closed. "I hate how simple you make things seem," she said softly. "They're not simple," I replied. "You just overcomplicate them." Her eyes opened again, locking onto mine. There was no smirk this time, no mask. Only honesty. You really don't get scared easily, do you? I do, I admitted. All the time. Then why don't you show it? Because fear doesn't need an audience. Her gaze lingered on me, steady, unreadable. Then she stood slowly and offered her hand. Come on, she said. Walk with me. We walked without talking, our footsteps echoing on the empty path behind the field. The sun was low, orange spilling across the sky. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet. You're the only person who doesn't want something from me. I don't need anything, I said. Maybe that's why I keep coming back. We stopped near the old bleachers. She turned to face me, expression unreadable. The silence stretched, filled with wind and the soft rustle of leaves. Then, very slowly, she stepped closer. I could feel the warmth from her body before she even touched me. She reached out, fingers brushing a strand of hair away from my face. The gesture was careful, almost hesitant. Your hair's always in your eyes, she murmured. Maybe I like it that way. Maybe I don't. Her hand lingered near my cheek. The distance between us dissolved into something electric. My heartbeat stuttered. She tilted her head, studying me like she was memorizing every detail. Stop looking at me like that, I whispered. Like what? Like you're about to do something reckless. She smiled faintly. Maybe I am. Before I could say anything, the sound of voices echoed nearby. She stepped back, breaking whatever had just happened. Her eyes darted toward the noise, then back to me. I have to go, she said quickly. They can't see us here. Violet. Tomorrow, she interrupted. Please. Then she was gone. That night, I couldn't stop replaying it. The way she had looked at me, the heat of her hand near my face, the fear in her voice when she said they couldn't see us. I understood that fear. I felt it too. But part of me wished she had stayed. The next day, she was back in class, sitting beside me as if nothing had happened. Her hair was perfectly styled again, her voice confident, her laughter practiced. But every time our eyes met, something flickered behind hers, something raw and unspoken. At lunch, she passed by my table, dropping a folded piece of paper beside my tray. No one else noticed. I waited until the cafeteria quieted before opening it. Inside, in her sharp handwriting, were 4 words. After school. Lab room. When I arrived, the room was empty except for her. The lights were low, sunlight spilling through the blinds. She was sitting on the counter, legs crossed, watching me. I didn't want anyone to see, she said. That makes 2 of us. She smiled, but it didn't last. You know this can't happen, she whispered. People wouldn't understand. I'm not asking them to. She slid off the counter, closing the space between us. You make it so hard to think. Then stop thinking, I said. For a moment, we just stood there, breaths shallow, the air thick with everything we hadn't said. She reached out, fingers tracing my wrist, moving slowly upward until her hand rested near my shoulder. I didn't move. Her voice was barely audible. You have no idea what you're doing to me. Maybe I do, I whispered back. Her eyes searched mine. Time seemed to blur around us, the world shrinking to that single point of contact. Then she let go, stepping back, her hands trembling. I can't, she said, almost pleading. Not yet. And even as she turned away, I knew she would come back. Because something had shifted. The line between what was safe and what was forbidden had disappeared, leaving only us, standing on the edge of something too dangerous to name and too beautiful to stop. The invitation appeared in my locker on a Friday morning. A silver card folded in half, the school logo pressed into its corner. Homecoming party. Everyone welcome. The handwriting below was unmistakable. Violets. I stared at it longer than I should have. I wasn't the type to go to parties, but something in me whispered that she wanted me there. Maybe she wouldn't admit it. Maybe I wanted her to. By nightfall, the gym had turned into something unrecognizable. Strings of lights hung from the ceiling, casting soft halos over moving bodies. Music pulsed through the air, loud enough to drown thought. Perfume, sweat, laughter. Everyone was dressed to be seen. I stood near the edge of the crowd, watching. My hands clutched a cup of juice I hadn't touched. She was easy to find. She always was. Violet moved through the room like she belonged to the rhythm itself. Her dress shimmered under the lights, silver catching every color around her. People turned as she passed. Our eyes met for a heartbeat, maybe less. She didn't smile. But she didn't look away. Someone called her name, and she turned, surrounded again by noise and attention. I exhaled, realizing I'd been holding my breath. The minutes blurred. I wandered toward the quieter corner near the hallway, away from the thumping bass. That was when I heard her voice. Sharp, low, angry. "Why are you acting like this, Violet?" a girl demanded. It was one of the Roses, her tone cutting. Violet's reply came tight, cold. "Because I'm tired of pretending." The other girl scoffed. "Pretending what? That you're better than us? Or that you actually like her?" I froze. The hallway tilted. Violet's silence was louder than any answer. Then the sound of footsteps. The girl left, muttering something cruel. Violet stood alone near the lockers, her hands trembling. When she finally noticed me, she looked startled. "How much did you hear?" she asked. "Enough," I said softly. She inhaled sharply, eyes darting away. "It's fine." She was drunk. She wasn't wrong. Her head snapped toward me. "Mira, don't." But I took a step closer. "Why not? You told me not to hide. You said pretending was exhausting." Her shoulders stiffened. "Not here." I lowered my voice. "Then where?" She hesitated. The noise from the party bled through the door behind us, muffled and distant. The hallways smelled faintly of perfume and electricity. "Finally," she said, almost pleading, outside. We slipped through the side exit, into the cold air behind the gym. The night was quiet, the grass damp under the faint glow of streetlights. She crossed her arms, trying to steady herself. "You shouldn't have come," she said. "You invited me." "I didn't think you would." "Then you don't know me as well as you think." Her mouth curved, but her voice cracked when she spoke again. "You shouldn't make this harder." "I'm not the one running away." She looked up sharply. "You think I'm afraid of you?" "I think you're afraid of what people will say." Her eyes flashed, hurt and anger tangled together. "You don't understand what it's like. You don't have people watching you all the time. You don't have to be perfect just to keep them close. I don't want you to be perfect." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "You make it sound simple." "It is." The silence stretched. The music from inside faded to a dull echo. A wind moved through the trees, carrying the faint scent of rain. When she spoke again, her voice was barely there. "Sometimes I think about what it would be like to stop pretending. Just once. Then stop." She looked at me as if I'd said something dangerous. Her eyes glimmered in the dim light, uncertain but drawn. She stepped closer, so close I could feel the warmth of her breath. "Why do you make it so easy to lose control?" she murmured. "Maybe you've never had it," I whispered back. Her hand lifted before she could stop it. Fingers brushed my cheek, light as air. The touch sent a shiver through me. She traced a line down to my jaw, her gaze fixed on my mouth, then back to my eyes. Neither of us moved for a moment. The world seemed to wait. Then she leaned in, slowly, as if she was testing gravity. Her lips met mine, soft and trembling. The kiss wasn't practiced or sure. It was hesitant, full of fear and wanting. My hand found her wrist, not to stop her, just to feel that she was real. The world disappeared in the space between breaths. When she pulled away, her eyes were wide, terrified, alive. "This can't happen," she whispered. But it already did. She took a step back, shaking her head. "I can't do this. Not here. Not like this." I wanted to reach for her, to tell her it was okay, but she turned away. Her voice trembled when she spoke again. "I have to go. Violet." She stopped, her back to me. "Don't make me choose right now," she said quietly. Then she walked back toward the gym, disappearing into the light and noise. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door that swallowed her. The wind picked up, carrying laughter from inside, mixing with the echo of her voice in my mind. I touched my lips, still warm, still unsure. The next day, she didn't come to school. The day after, she did, but she didn't look at me. Her friends were around her again, laughing too loudly, pretending nothing had happened. I tried to focus in class, but my thoughts kept drifting. Every time I glanced her way, she was already looking somewhere else. By lunch, I'd almost convinced myself that I had imagined it all. Then I saw her standing by the window near the cafeteria, alone. For a moment, the sunlight caught her hair, and she turned. Our eyes met again. It was quick, just a flicker, but there was something there. A spark that refused to die. She turned away first, walking off before anyone could notice. That night, the memory of her kiss haunted me. The way she trembled. The way she whispered this can't happen even as she held on. I understood that fear, but it didn't make it easier. Sometimes things change in silence. You don't realize it until it's too late. I lay awake for hours, listening to the hum of the street outside, wondering if she was doing the same. When I finally slept, I dreamed of her again. Not the version everyone saw, but the one from that night, standing under the dim streetlight, eyes full of everything she was afraid to say. And in the dream, she didn't walk away. Rumors travel faster than truth. By Monday, everyone knew something. Not exactly what, but enough to whisper. Enough to stare. The story twisted with every retelling, changing shape as it passed from mouth to mouth. Violet and I barely spoke. When we crossed paths, she kept her face calm, but her eyes betrayed her. There was a quiet panic behind them, a kind of storm she couldn't hide. In the cafeteria, people turned when she walked by. The roses avoided her now, whispering when she passed. I watched from a distance, heart heavy, knowing she was alone in a way she had never been before. That afternoon, I found her behind the bleachers again. The same spot where the air always felt a little colder. She sat with her back against the metal frame, knees drawn close. "They're saying things," she said without looking at me. "They think I've lost it." I sat beside her, leaving a small space between us. "You haven't." "I might have," she murmured. "I used to care about what they thought. Now I don't even know what I care about anymore." Her hands trembled. I reached over and placed mine on top of hers. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she turned her palm upward and held on. The silence that followed was soft. The wind brushed against us, carrying the faint hum of a practice game in the distance. "They won't let this go," she said. "They'll find something else soon." She shook her head slowly. "It's not that simple. I built everything on how people saw me. The clothes, the friends, the smile. And now it's all gone." "Maybe that's good," I said quietly. She looked at me, her expression half a question. "Good. You can start over." Without pretending. Her laugh was weak, almost a sigh. "You really think that's possible?" "I do." For a long time, she didn't answer. Then she leaned her head against my shoulder, eyes closing. "You make it sound like I can be brave." "You already are," I whispered. We stayed like that until the sun slipped lower, painting the sky in orange and violet. The air smelled of grass and fading daylight. When she finally stood, she didn't let go of my hand. "Thank you," she said softly. "For not running." I wouldn't know where to go. That night, messages started showing up on my phone. Anonymous accounts, half-hidden threats, fake sympathy. I ignored them. But I knew she was getting worse ones. At school the next day, she wasn't in class. When I asked around, someone said she was called to the principal's office after a teacher overheard two students fighting about her. I felt something twist inside me. I found her later by the art wing, sitting on the floor near the windows. The light hit her hair in soft gold streaks. She looked up when she heard my steps. "They told me to lay low for a while," she said bitterly. "As if hiding will fix anything. You don't have to listen to them." She smiled without joy. "You always think it's that easy." "It's not easy," I said. "It's just worth it." Her eyes softened. "You always say things that make sense until they start to hurt." "Because truth usually does." She laughed quietly, the sound cracked at the edges. Then she stood, pulling me with her. "Walk with me," she said. We ended up near the edge of the field where the grass met the road. It was quiet except for the faint hum of traffic far away. She turned to me, her face unreadable. "I can't keep doing this," she said finally. Hiding. Apologizing. Pretending it never happened. "You don't have to." She took a step closer. "If I stop pretending, I lose everything. You'll still have yourself." Her eyes glistened. "And you. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time, she smiled like she believed me. That week blurred into days of rumors, silence, and stolen glances. But something inside her had changed. The way she walked, the way she met people's eyes. She wasn't shrinking anymore. The night before graduation, she texted me one sentence. "Tomorrow, I'm done hiding." I didn't sleep after that. The ceremony took place under a wide blue sky. The field was covered in rows of white chairs, a sea of caps and gowns. Parents filled the stands, their cheers mixing with the hum of summer heat. I sat near the back, trying to stay still. When they called her name, the crowd clapped politely. Violet Gray walked across the stage like she owned every step, but this time, her smile wasn't the one she used to wear. It was quieter, realer. After receiving her diploma, she didn't return to her seat. Instead, she stopped near the podium, turning back to the microphone. The principal looked confused, but she didn't care. Her voice carried across the field. "I wasn't supposed to speak today," she began, steady but trembling. "But I need to." People shifted in their chairs. The air thickened. "I spent most of my time here trying to be perfect," she said. "I thought if people liked me, it would mean something. That it would make me real. But it didn't. It just made me tired. I hurt people without meaning to. I lost myself somewhere between trying to fit in and trying not to disappear." She paused, eyes scanning the crowd. "I don't know what happens next. I just know I want to be honest. Even if it's hard. Even if it costs me everything." Then her gaze found mine. In that instant, the noise around us faded. She took a breath. "Sometimes courage isn't loud," she said softly. "Sometimes it's just holding someone's hand, even when everyone's watching." Her words fell into the silence like rain. No one moved. Then she stepped away from the microphone, walked past the rows of students, and came straight toward me. I could hear my heart beat louder than the applause that started to rise. She stopped in front of me, her hands shaking. "Can I?" she asked, voice barely audible. I nodded. She reached down and took my hand. Warm, firm, certain. The crowd stirred, confused murmurs spreading like waves, but she didn't care. She turned to face them, chin lifted, eyes steady. "Let them talk," she said quietly. "I'm done pretending." The applause grew louder, hesitant at first, then real. Somewhere in the crowd, someone cheered. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I didn't look away. When the ceremony ended, people surrounded her, some congratulating, some avoiding, some just staring. She handled it all with calm grace. When we finally slipped away from the noise, the sun was sinking behind the bleachers. The light turned everything gold. We walked toward the parking lot, fingers still intertwined. The air smelled like summer and cut grass. "I didn't plan any of that," she said softly. "I know. I just needed to say it. I'm glad you did." She stopped walking, turned to me, and for a moment, she looked unsure again. "You really think we can do this?" "I think we already are." Her smile broke through then, small and perfect. She reached up, touching my face with trembling fingers. "I used to love being seen," she whispered. "Now I just want to be seen by you." The world around us seemed to fade. The last bit of sunlight spilled across her skin, painting her in warmth. She leaned in slowly, resting her forehead against mine. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For making me real." I closed my eyes, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing, the softness of the moment, the quiet promise it carried. The crowd's noise had vanished, replaced by the sound of distant birds and the hum of evening. We stood there until the shadows stretched long across the field, our hands still linked, our hearts beating in sync with the fading day. When we finally walked away, neither of us looked back. The world could say whatever it wanted. Because for the first time, we weren't pretending anymore. We were exactly who we were meant to be. And that was enough. Love doesn't always arrive the way we expect. Sometimes it finds us in the quiet moments between fear and truth. Sometimes it looks like two hands meeting in a crowd that refuses to understand. Mira and Violet didn't plan for any of it. They weren't supposed to cross that line, to risk everything for something that might break them. But they did. And in that risk, they found something real. Their story isn't about perfection. It's about courage. The kind that whispers instead of shouts. The kind that teaches you that being seen is not the same as being known. It's about two girls who stopped hiding and learned that love, no matter how uncertain, is still worth the fall. Maybe that's what we're all looking for. Someone who sees the parts we've tried to hide and still decides to stay. If you felt something while listening to their story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There are more stories waiting, stories about connection, about honesty, about love in all its shapes. Because here, every story begins with a heartbeat. This is She and SHE.